And we're back. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rollsicle. I, of course, am Nathaniel, one of the hosts here at Rollsicle, and we are here for the last part of the Magic the Gathering Foundation set review. This one, multicolor and colorless cards. We're going to start with colorless, but yeah, we have gone through all of the cards other than the special guest cards, which I don't think we're going to be doing a video on because there's so few of those. They can show up from time to time, but they're very, very unlikely to. So maybe we'll just let that spice up your draft or sealed if you happen to open one of them. But yes, before we jump into things, a few quick disclaimers that I always cover at the beginning of this. Thank you guys for supporting the channel so much. And I just want to say, if any of you haven't left likes, comments, subscribed, that really, really, really does so much for the channel. We've grown so much in just the last couple months that we've been, that me and Ashley have taken over the channel and really turned it into what we've always dreamed of. And you guys have been so foundational, but in making this what we've always wanted it to be. So thank you guys so much. And I just wanted to say, if you haven't, it really, really does mean the world. My second disclaimer, shout out to my co-host Ashley. She's not able to be making these videos with me, but she is still part of the team and she made the actual slides that we're going over. So leave some love for her in the comments below. I love her. I hope you guys do too. And I just want to make sure that she knows how appreciated she is. Moving into this, we rate our cards on a scale of 1 to 10, and we're going to start out with a banger. This is Sire of Seven Deaths. If you guys haven't checked out the first of the Road to Mythic series, please do. We put in the work with this card. Now, we didn't have the best record, but we certainly didn't have the worst, and this card is so broken. 7-drop with 7 keywords on it as a 7/7. You can read them. I don't even need to, but it is so broken. 10 out of 10. Bomb. Next, we have Banner of Kinship. This is a 5-mana artifact that says, as it enters, you choose a creature type. And when you do, you put fellowship counters on it for each of the creatures of that type you control, and then it gives them +1/+1 for each of those counters. It's a long list of words, a long paragraph, but that's what it does. It's very, very powerful in tribal constructed decks, but there's not a lot of tribes in this format. Where was this in Bloomburrow? This would have been in every single deck in Bloomburrow if you pulled this card, but it's fine. We got it just a little bit late, and we got it in a format for limited where it's basically unplayable. I'm going to give this card a 2 out of 10. If you happen to be building elves or you happen to be building goblins, I think that's about it that you could even build. Maybe zombies, vampires, you could build into those, but 2 out of 10. Don't play this card. Next, we have Fishing Pole. This is a 1-drop artifact equipment. Equipped creature has pay 1, tap Fishing Pole, put a bait counter on Fishing Pole, and then whenever equipped creature becomes untapped, remove a bait counter from this equipment. If you do, create a 1/1 blue fish creature token. It's long. I had to look away from the camera for a while just to read that. It's complicated. It's convoluted. I have seen it put in the work like once, and that's about it. It's not very playable. I don't suggest grabbing this card. 2 out of 10. It doesn't do a hell of a lot. All right, next we have Leyline Axe. This is kind of like the Leyline enchantments, except it's an artifact. It's a 4-mana artifact that says if this card is in your opening hand, you get to start with it on the battlefield. That's what all the Leylines do, and that's what makes this even that good. But then its ability is pretty good. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has double strike and trample. So this turns anything moderately big, and I'm talking like 3 power, into a 4 power double striker with trample. Oh, buddy. Oh, buddy. Now, the equip is 3, but you have to pay 4 to get it out. But if you start with this on the battlefield, what a great start. I mean, what a great start. This is a really good card, but I don't think it breaks into the threshold of just broken, stupid good. So I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. Next, we have Quick Draw Katana. This is a 2-mana equipment that during your turn, equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has first strike, and you can equip it for 2. Now, I'm not a huge fan of first strike on your turn. It plays into aggressive play styles because you can't play it very defensively. But I think that defense and hesitation and waiting to cast spells is the way to win Magic in the long run. Sure, if you happen to build an aggro deck, this can work a little bit better in those. But usually in an aggro deck, you want to get more out of spending 4 mana. So I just don't think this really does what you need it to do. 3 out of 10. Ravenous Amulet. Now, this was one I've never actually played myself, and I haven't read too much into. So it's a 2-mana, pay 1, tap it, sack a creature. draw a card, and put a soul counter on it. Now, if this is in the creature sacking deck, which is, I think, red-black, that can be pretty good. Like, this goes rather hard with 9 Lives Familiar because you can draw a lot of cards off of it. Now, then, pay 4, tap it, sack the artifact. Each opponent loses life equal to the number of soul counters on it. So this is totally playable in the right deck, but I think in the wrong deck, it's not a very good card. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10 as well. Okay, next we have Scrawling Crawler. I love this card. This is a 3-mana 3/2 that says at the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card. Now, you're getting a little bit more of a benefit off of that because you're drawing it right before your draw step and then your turn, so you just untapped all your land and everything, but it does benefit your opponent in that sense. That being said, whenever an opponent draws a card, even the one they draw for their turn, they lose a life. So this kind of puts them on a pretty quick clock. Even if this comes out on turn 3, you might have done some damage, but even if you haven't, they're immediately on a 10-turn clock, and they got to start doing stuff. Now, things are going to start happening rather quickly because everyone's drawing so many cards per turn, but I still think this card is incredible. It puts in a lot of work. It still doesn't break and win the game, so I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. All right, next we have Adventuring Gear. This is a 1-mana equipment that you can equip for 1 that does nothing until a land enters, and then for that turn, equipped creature gets +2/+2. This is entirely unplayable. Ashley is going to have my head in the comments section and when I get to see her again for saying that, but this card sucks. Don't play this card. Don't play Adventuring Gear. Don't ever put it in your deck. If you ever see it do good, I promise you the deck that you got beat that did good with Adventuring Gear could have done better and beat you even worse with a different card. So it's just such a bad card. You should never put it in a deck. 1 out of 10. You know, maybe I should have 0 on the scale. That would be interesting. Not changing the scale now, but maybe in the future we'll do a 0 to 10 scale. All right, next we have a Burnished Heart. This is a 3-mana 2/2 that you can pay 3, sack it, search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So it is a ramp creature. Now, one thing that I want to point out, it's still a 2/2 creature, which isn't irrelevant. It's not great, but it's not irrelevant because there's a lot of 2 toughness things, so you can kind of hold this up to trade with and not get that ramp effect. I also want to remind some people that might be newer to Magic, if you guys are watching this channel, part of it is that one of us is more experienced, the other host is pretty new to Magic. Shout out to Ashley. And that's perfectly okay, but if you don't know, you can block something with this creature, sack it to still get the 2 lands, and the damage that you blocked, unless the creature has trample, is all going to not hit you. So you can kind of get a little bit of an extra benefit off of this because it's a creature, which is really nice. I think because of that, it's going to get a completely playable 4 out of 10. All right, next we have Campus Guide. This is a 2-mana 2/1 that when it enters, you may search for a basic land and put it on top of your library. So what this essentially does is it's a 2-mana 2/1 that says you can guarantee that next turn you draw the type of land that you needed to draw next turn. Now it is a may trigger, which is nice. You don't have to do that if it's late game and you just don't want to draw a land. So I don't hate this card. I think it's very playable. I think it can get you the land that you need, and I think that's that. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. All right, next we have Gleaming Barrier. This is a 2-mana 0/4 Defender that says when this creature dies, create a treasure token. Now, 0/4 Defender can put up the work a little bit. It's going to prevent you from taking damage for a little while, and it is nice that you get a treasure when it dies so that you can kind of ramp if you need to. You can fix your colors if you need to because you splash, you know, those sorts of things. But I just don't think this creature does what it really needs to do. I think that it probably could have been a 1-drop and it would have been much more powerful. 1-drop as an uncommon maybe, but I just don't see people playing this very often. I don't play it very often. I don't love it. If you are splashing, it's nice, but 3 out of 10. It's playable, but you probably shouldn't play it too often. All right, next we have Gold Vein Pick. This is a 2-mana equipment with equip 1. Equipped creature gets +1/+1, so that's a little much, but whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. That is great. It is going to ramp you, and you want to put this on either something big with trample or something with evasion, because then you're going to be getting that treasure basically every single turn. This pops off with a Healer's Hawk or a Strix Lookout, I think is the name of it, I don't know for sure. Whatever the Strix is, 1/2 with Vigilance. I mean, it does great on those cards because Healer's Hawk, you're getting extra health every time and getting a treasure because of that evasion. Strix, you're getting extra damage every time getting a treasure, and it's Vigilance, so you have a bigger blocker. All sorts of good stuff. This is a great card. I think Goldvein Pick is going to get a 5 out of 10 from me. There's a lot of decks that want it, whether it's Big Stompy, whether it's Flyers, whatever it might be. All right, next is Heraldic Banner. You know, I thought this card was better than it was in practice. It's a 3 mana rock, essentially. Add 1 mana of the chosen color. So you have to choose a color. When you choose that color, that's the only color it can tap for. It's not a mana rock that can tap for any color, which for 3 mana you might think so. Now, creatures you control of the chosen color get +1/+0. And if you have a deck of creatures that are predominantly one color, this is a playable card. And the ramp is nice in like green, maybe certain black decks, maybe even certain blue decks. But I mean, I guess all the colors have their higher ends, but those probably have the most high end cost cards. But it's just not great. Like, more often than not, this is buffing 1 or 2 creatures. It can only tap for the extra color. It just doesn't do what I need it to do. Because of that, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. All right, next we have Juggernaut. This is a 4 mana 5/3 that has to attack each combat if able, and can't be blocked by walls. So, you know, that's come up for one person ever. Okay, probably not, but all jokes aside, there's not a lot of walls in this format, so it doesn't come up very often. Now, this creature has to attack each combat if able, and it has 3 toughness, so it's gonna die pretty quickly. It's not like you really got some bang for your buck there. 5/3 is just a redistributed 4/4, and it forces you to attack. So, no, I don't think this card is very great. No, I don't see it played very often, and I'm going to give it a 2 out of 10. Don't play this card. All right, next we have Meteor Golem, finally something a little bit more playable. This is a 7-drop 3/3, but when it enters, you just destroy non-land permanent an opponent controls. So this is great removal, if expensive. It is great removal. You can just shoot anything you need with this. It is an enters effect, so you don't have to cast it. If you can zombify this back, great. If you can make a copy of it, great. Those are all great ways to get this trigger multiple times, and even just one time, this is still a really good card. We are going to give it a 5 out of 10. All right, next we have Solemn Simulacrum, this the sad robot himself, if you know that. I think some people call him that. I guess I'm not 100% sure. He is a 4-drop 2/2, but when he enters, you get to search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. When he dies, you get to draw a card. So you get to ramp, you get some card draw, and you get a 2/2 body that you can block with, you can kill with, you can trade with, you can chump with, whatever it might be. Really good card. All around pretty solid. I'm actually going to give this one a 6 out of 10, just because every deck wants some land, every deck wants to draw cards, every deck wants a body. Now, the fact that it's a 4-drop can be a little tough, but, you know, if you have a bigger expensive card, the ramp is nice, so 6 out of 10. All right, next we have Swiftfoot Boots. All right, this is a 2 mana equipped creature. Equipment for equip 1. Equipped creature gets hexproof and haste, so it's kind of a slightly more powerful but slightly more expensive Lightning Greaves. Now, Lightning Greaves is so broken and constructed because of the 0 equip cost, but Swiftfoot Boots is still pretty good. It's nice to be able to give something haste for just 1 extra mana. It's also decent to give it hexproof. I don't think this is unplayable. I don't think it's crazy playable, but if you have a card that you really want to attack, or that you really want to be able to use its tap ability the turn it comes out, think like a Krenko or a Dracoseth or those types of cards, usually those are much more beneficial, Atali, etc., if you can attack that first turn, and Swiftfoot Boots isn't a bad pickup for those decks. So because of that, I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. Totally playable. And that is it for the colorless. So on to the multicolored, we have Alicia, who laughs at fate. This is Alicia, I don't know. I'll go with Alicia because it's an E. 3 mana, 2/2. It has first strike. Whenever it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So the first time it attacks, it's going to be a 3/3. And at the beginning of your instep, if you attacked this turn, return target creature card with mana value less than or equal to Alicia's power from your graveyard to the battlefield. So powerful, so good. This is an incredible rare. It does almost all the work itself, and at 3 mana, it's really, really good. If they don't have a way to get rid of it early on, this thing is just going to take over the game. 9 out of 10. It doesn't quite hit the 10 out of 10 bomb range for me, but it's really solid. All right, next we have the green-white creatures you control get +1/+1 Anthem enchantment, Anthem of Champions. That is solid, but not broken. I mean, I never hate playing this and having all my creatures be a little bit bigger, but I find that it also doesn't do a whole lot when you play it. Now, it's definitely a good card. I just don't think it's crazy broken, and it's going to land at a 6 out of 10. All right, next we have Ashroot Animist. This is a 4-mana 4/4 trample, already pretty solid. Whenever this creature attacks, another target creature you control gains trample and gets +X/+X, where X is this creature's power. So you really are already giving something else +4/+4, or maybe more if you can buff up this creature. And it has its own trample. Honestly, this is just way better than most cards ever would be. So this is showing that rare usually makes better cards than common and uncommon, just generally speaking. Now, it's not a rare that just wins the game on its own, but it does do more than most other cards are going to do, and because of that, I think it's going to land the 7 out of 10 spot. Between 7 and 8. I'm going to give it 7, but it's right in between those two. All right, next we have a Dreadwing Scavenger. This is a 3-mana 2/2 staple uncommon for blue-black. Flying, whenever it enters or attacks, draw a card, then discard, which is the preferred over discard than draw. And, of course, it's got Threshold, which we'll get to relatively quickly because you're discarding a card every turn. It gets +1/+1 and has Death Touch, so it becomes a 3/3 flyer with Death Touch, which is really nice. And honestly, I think this ability is great. You get to cycle through the cards that you're drawing, so you can get to what you really need. You get to fill your graveyard. You're probably going to get to do some stuff with that graveyard if you're a black deck. So great card. I think this is a staple uncommon. 6 out of 10 for me. 6 out of 10. It puts in the work. It really does. All right, next we have Alinda, Saint of Dusk. This is such a good card. 4-mana 4/4, white and black, lifelink, and hexproof from instants. So you can only remove her with sorcery removal. That really changes the game and what you can use to remove her. So she is a 4/4 lifelinker, which is already great for white-black. That is the life gain deck, I guess is what I'm going for, combo of colors. As long as your life total is greater than your starting life, she's actually a 5/5 and has menace, which is crazy good. She was already perfectly good as a 4/4 with lifelink and hexproof from instants. But now she might be a 5/5 with menace, and then she gets an additional +5/+5 as long as your life total is at least 10 greater than your starting life total. This is such an incredible, incredible card. It does so much for the deck. I mean, I just can't even begin with how good this card is. It puts in the work, it puts in the hours, and it's taking what's ours. I'm going to give it a... Oh my gosh. I'm going to give it a... I'm thinking 9 out of 10? What have I given 10 out of 10 in the past? I'm going to give it 9 out of 10. I don't think it quite slips into the, oh my god, the game's over category, but by golly is it close. 9 out of 10. All right, next we have Fiendish Panda. This is a 4-mana... This is the white-black staple uncommon. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Very powerful. And then when it dies, you get to return another target non-bearer creature card with mana value less than or equal to this creature's power from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you buff this up by 1, and it can go back and get Alinda. I mean, this Fiendish Panda, I think, is the best uncommon of the 2 color combinations. I mean, bite me in the comments. Bite down. if you think I'm wrong. But, and seriously, please let me know. I like constructive criticism, but I personally think this is the most powerful one. I mean, sure, for 4 mana, it starts out pretty low, but you're probably not going to play it unless you have a way to gain life that turn. So it's probably going to be a 4/3 for 4 that gets you another creature when it dies. Very, very powerful. I love this card. 6 out of 10. 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10. I love Fiendish Panda. 7 out of 10 from me. All right, next we have a Coma World Eater. This is a 7-drop, 8/12, can't be countered. 4 of the drop is 2 green and 2 blue. Trample, ward 4. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create 4 3/3 blue serpent creature tokens named Coma's Coil. Yes, this is a card that says cast it, it can't be countered if it gets back to your turn and attacks, or if you had like Lightning Greaves already, not Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots, and you cast it while you had 8 mana, the game is probably over. But I don't think it's as broken as it sounds just because it's a 7-drop. Right? So it's really expensive to get there. You have to really wait it out in this deck. Now, green-blue is landfall, so there is a lot of ramp in there. There's a lot of ways to get to this before turn 7. But I'm hesitant to give it that coveted 10 out of 10, so it's going to land in the 9 out of 10 category. It's still an incredible top end. Anytime someone plays it, if you can't remove it the turn it comes out, and it's got ward 4. Ooh, it's got ward 4. 10 out of 10. It's a 10 out of 10. I don't know what I was thinking. It's a 10 out of 10. All right, next we have Kaikar, Zephyr Awakener. This is a flying 3/4 for 4, so that's already pretty good. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you basically get to blink a creature you control, or you get to create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Pretty solid. I mean, you're just getting more benefit after you already get a 3/4 flyer. And you can have a lot of really good enter the battlefield effects. I mean, think just Helpful Hunter, our cute little cat friend. I mean, he's going to be drawing you a card basically every time you cast an instant or sorcery if you have a Kaikar out. So this thing can really put in the work. I would also exile another target creature you control, return it at the beginning of the next end step. So you can totally use, well, I guess you could use it for protection on your creatures anyways. You can hold up your instant, and if an opponent tries to remove your creature, bam. Kaikar is a very, very powerful creature. That being said, I don't think it's as broken as the other ones. It's going to land at the 8 out of 10 category. All right, next we have Mizzet Visionary. It is a 6 mana 5/5 flying. You have no maximum hand size, which is nice, but probably isn't going to matter by the time you're casting a 6-drop because you're probably not drawing that many cards. But whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, you draw that many cards. Okay. That sounds so broken, if you're anything like me. But it sounds so broken because we look at it from a constructed standpoint. This is really just kind of another Shivan Dragon, right? It's a 6 mana 5/5 flyer that's not going to do a whole lot of other stuff. If you happen to hit with a source of non-combat damage and you choose to hit directly at the opponent, sure, it does pretty good. But that's not going to happen very often. It gets a bump above Shivan Dragon, that's for sure, but it doesn't really strike me as insanely broken. I can see this card not doing a whole lot other than be a 6 mana 5/5 flyer, which is pretty good. So I'm going to give it the 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10, folks. All right, next we have Perforating Artist. This is a 3 mana 3/2 Death Touch with Raid. At the beginning of your end step, if you've attacked this turn, each opponent loses 3 life unless they sack a non-land permanent or discard a card. This just gives you a lot of value over time, right? You're either hurting them, they're sacking permanents, or they're discarding cards. And all things considered, it's on the body of a 3/2 Death Toucher. That's pretty good for 3 mana. So I love this card. I think it's very powerful. I think it has a lot of benefit to playing it. Even just a 3 mana 3/2 Death Touch is going to put in the work. And then the Raid on top of it is just really, really nice. I'm going to give this a 6 out of 10. All right, next we have Wardens of the Cycle. This is the staple uncommon for black and green. I guess I should have said the previous one was for black and red. This is an Elf Warlock 3/4 with a Morbid At the end of your turn, if a creature has died this turn, you either gain 2 life, you're never going to choose that one, or draw a card and lose 1 life. You're probably going to choose that one. Now, you can gain 2 life if you desperately need it, but it's a 3/4 for 4 that can draw you quite a few cards if it survives for quite a few end steps where you lost a creature. That makes this a very playable card. It makes it very powerful in the right deck, which of course is green-black. So yeah, it can totally work, and I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. I don't think it's quite as good as Perforating Artist, but it's a pretty good card. I always see it get some value basically every time I see it get played. All right, next we have Zimone Paradox Sculptor. This is a powerful mythic in the format. 4 mana 1/4, which sounds so bad. 4 mana 1/4. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures you control, though. So it's going to be a 2/5 if you choose her, or you can choose something else if that's more powerful. Then you can pay a green and a blue and tap her to double the number of each kind of counter on up to 2 target creatures and or artifacts you control. That's really, really powerful. I mean, extremely powerful. So, sure. She starts out as a 1/4, but she's going to get very big. She's going to get very strong, or she's going to make something else very big and very strong, and then the opponents have to choose between removing the really powerful thing or removing the engine that made that other thing really powerful. So Zimone is indeed part of the reason why I was so hesitant before. 10 out of 10. Does it herself, basically. I mean, you kind of want at least one other creature, but yeah. As long as you have one other creature, she's buffing both of them up. She's doubling those counters. You can do it at instant speed, so you can literally block with her. Thank you. Thank you, motorcycle outside of my house. I hope you guys didn't hear that, but you probably did. You can literally block with her and then do her ability as like a combat trick. It's so nice. Or you can block with other creatures and then do her ability as a combat trick. It's so nice. I love her. She's an incredible card. 10 out of 10. Next, we have Balmor, Battle Mage Captain. This is the blue-red staple uncommon. It is a flying 1/3. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, which, by the way, flying 1/3, already playable for 2 mana. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain trample until end of turn. Very powerful if you cast a lot of instants and sorceries. So you want very cheap instants and sorceries, but if you do have that and you have a couple creatures and you have a Balmor, things are about to die very quickly. And by things, I mean your opponent. So this is a very powerful card, but it's really only good in its deck. So you got to play around that. And it is legendary, so keep that in mind. You can't have multiple of these out on the battlefield, really. So you got to keep that in mind, but it is a very good card. It's going to land in the 6 out of 10 category for me in the right deck, but I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10 just because you don't always pick it up in the right deck. All right, next we have Consuming Aberration. This is a 5 mana, blue and a black horror. It says its power and toughness are equal to the number of cards in your opponent's multiple graveyards. So this is obviously more powerful in like Commander. Whenever you cast a spell, any spell, each opponent reveals cards from the top of their library until they reveal a land card, then puts those cards into their graveyard. Now, by the time you're casting this for 5 mana, your opponent probably has at least 4 or 5 cards in their graveyard. So you're going to be getting a 4 or 5 drop out of this that has the chance to become something significantly bigger. I don't think this is a bad card at all. I think this is a very good card, but it's not broken. It doesn't have trample. It doesn't really win you the game on its own in that sense. So, and it's not really buffing anything else up. So if they remove it, you're a little SOL. So I think it's great. I just don't think it's incredible. So it's going to get 7 out of 10 from me. All right, next we have Empyrean Eagle. This is the 3 mana white-blue staple uncommon. 2/3 flyer, and other creatures you control with flying get +1/+1. This is great in the blue-white flyers deck because you're going to be playing almost only flyers. So this is just buffing up every creature you control for what? You're sacking 1 power from the staple vanilla, and even then it has flying, so it's not a staple vanilla card. This is incredible. This is exactly what you want in that deck. Now, it doesn't do a whole lot in the other decks unless you happen to have a lot of flyers in those, but realistically speaking, this is going to put in the work. I think it's a great card. 6 out of 10. Then we get Good Fortune Unicorn. This is the green-white staple uncommon, and I don't like this card very much. Whenever another creature you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it's a 2/2 creature. So this is a 2/2 for 3 that does nothing when you play it. When you play another creature, it only gets +1/+1 counter then. Then when you play an additional creature, you've gotten value out of this in the sense that you kind of gained more power and toughness than the mana you spent. And that's 2 turns away. More often than not, I'm going to spend 3 mana on this creature, play it out, and my opponent's going to remove it for 1 mana with a stab or a burst lightning, or 2 mana with an abrade, or whatever it might be. And I'm just not going to get a lot of value out of this card. So because of that, I actually don't really love this. I think you can build a very strong green-white deck without this. That being said, if you are in green-white, it's probably worth playing. So because of that, it's going to fall in the 3 out of 10 category for me. All right, next we have Heroic Reinforcements, the white and red aggro staple uncommon. This one's pretty simple. Create 2 1/1 soldiers, and then until end of turn, creatures you control get haste and +1/+1. So it's creating 2 2s for the turn, but they're really 1/1s, and it's buffing everything else up by +1/+1. This is a great card for what red-white wants to do, which is go wide and go aggressive. It works out wonderfully, and because of that, it's going to get a 6 out of 10 for doing what it's supposed to do. All right, so next we have Lathril, Blade of the Elves. This is a black and green card that leans into the elf strategy. It is a menace 2/3. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, which is tough because it's only a 2/3 on turn 4. So it's going to be hard to get this out and actually get it to attack things. But if it does, whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you get to make that many 1/1 elf warrior creature tokens. So it is very powerful in that sense. And then if you happen to have a ton of elves, you can tap it, tap 10 untapped elves you control, and each opponent loses 10 life and you gain 10 life, which is pretty fun in that sense. But again, you have to be building elves. This isn't really a reason to build elves because we don't build decks around one card. But if you're in sealed and you open up this and you open up a couple of Dwynens and you open up a lot of other elves, then yeah, build elves. It sounds like a lot of fun. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. All right, next we have Muldrotha, the Gravetide. This is a 6 mana green, blue, and black elemental avatar 6/6 for 6. During each of your turns, you may play a land and cast a permanent spell of each permanent type from your graveyard. So you do get to play extra lands if they're in your graveyard, and you do get to cast a cast a permanent spell of each permanent type. That's pretty powerful. I haven't seen this get played a whole lot. Now, it is a top end, and you do have to be in 3 colors for it, but green is a good color. If you green anything, it's pretty easy to splash that 3rd color, so it's totally playable. I think this is a pretty solid card. It's going to do a good bit when it hits, but it's not going to do anything too crazy. I'm going to put it in the... I guess you could be able to do that the turn it comes out, but it's only going to get you the land the turn it comes out because you just spent 6 mana to cast it. And it doesn't draw you any cards, but it does give you access to cards from your graveyard, so 8 out of 10. That sounds really powerful top end. All right, next we have Progenitus. This is 2 times WUBRG. So you got to do WUBRG twice to cast this. You can read it on the screen, but I'm going to tell you right now, 1 out of 10, never try to play this in limited. It will never work. Don't bother. Just don't bother. All right, next we have Tatiova. I didn't even realize that there was other stuff. Benthic Druid. I just call her Tatiova. She is our queen. 5 mana, 3/3 sounds really bad, but whenever a land enters, gain a life and draw a card. You guys know me, I'm a sucker for draw a card, and I'm a sucker for draw a card for a reason. It's a really, really, really good mechanic to have on a card. And in this case, you want to play her and then play your land for a turn, so you're guaranteed to get a life gain and basically get the 2-for-1 in your favor of drawing a card, so she replaces herself. And then if you play any lands in the future, you're just getting extra benefit from her. Tatiova is a great card. It does exactly what green-blue wants to do. It's the green-blue staple uncommon. This is a phenomenal card. 7 out of 10. Love Tatiova. All right, next we have Swift Blade Vindicator. This is a white-red and that's it, white-red. 1/1, Double Strike, Vigilance, Trample. So this card exists to be buffed, right? As a 1/1 with Double Strike, Vigilance, and Trample, it doesn't do a whole lot. It does a little bit, but it doesn't do a whole lot. But if you manage to get this up to a 3/3 or a 4/4, suddenly it's a very, very dangerous creature. That being said, that's a pretty hard thing to do in red-white, which is what this card is. So because of that, I find it to be a little like contradictory to the colors that it is and what it can actually do. And because of that conflict, I don't think it's that great of a card. It's playable, but I think that's about where it lands, and I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. And lastly, we have 1,000-Year Storm. This is a 4 blue and a red rare. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, it's an enchantment. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery card, spell, copy it for each other instant or sorcery spell that you have cast before at this turn. So you cast a spell, then you cast another one, you get to copy it. Then you cast another one, you get to copy it twice, for a total of 3 times, etc. Very powerful, but very, very specific. This does absolutely nothing, unless you are in exactly what it wants, the Spellslinger deck. And even then, the turn it comes out, it's probably doing absolutely nothing. So because of that, it's going to get my very, very unlikely to get, but common in these cases, 1 out of 10. Don't play 1,000-Year Storm. It's not worth it. It might sound fun to build around it, and maybe if your sealed pool is perfect for it, but by golly, this is an unplayable card. 1 out of 10. And that's that. We have covered every single card other than the, the special guest cards that can show up in the boosters. So almost all the cards you're going to see have been covered here on the channel. Leave a like down below if you enjoyed this video. Leave a comment telling me what's your favorite multicolored card, what's your favorite multicolored or colorless card, what's your least favorite multicolored or colorless card, and go ahead, since we finished the whole set, leave your favorite card and least favorite card in general. We'd love to hear from you guys. One more shout out to all of you and a disclaimer of please, please, please support the channel. It really does mean the world to us. It completely changes the trajectory of Rollsicle. Every time that we continue to grow, it makes making these videos easier. It gives us more motivation. It builds the community that we're in, which is exactly why we do this. So thank you guys so much for so much support. You really have been the bread and butter of what makes Rollsicle what it is. So you guys are the best. One final shout out to Ashley for making all these presentations. She did such a wonderful job, and these videos wouldn't exist without her. Could not ask for a better co-host for Rollsicle. So much love to her. I know she's having a great time in California, but I'll actually be there pretty soon after recording this. So you guys will be seeing these while I'm actually on that trip. So yep, huge shout out to her. Huge shout out to all of you guys. And that's going to cover it for this whole series. If you guys enjoyed it, let us know down below. But that's all I have for you. So may those rolls be ever in your favor. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace out.